Okay, so let's get right into it. We're going to tackle one of the biggest, most frustrating questions out there right now. When it comes to climate change, why is it so incredibly hard to get everyone on the same page and actually do something?
It's a fair question, right? I mean, think back to 2015. We had this huge historic moment where it seemed like the entire world agreed. And yet, here we are, and progress just feels stuck. It's like we're spinning our wheels. So, what's going on? That's exactly what we're going to unpack here.
And the whole story really starts with this one landmark achievement, the Paris Agreement. This was supposed to be it, the moment the world finally came together with one voice for one common goal.
So, the main idea was to keep global temperature rise well below 2 degrees Celsius. But the how is what made it so different. Instead of some top down command, the agreement said, okay, every single country, you figure out your own plan. These were called nationally determined plans. The whole idea was to be flexible, to make sure every country felt they could sign on. But that flexibility, the very thing that made the agreement possible, well, that turned out to be a major paradox. It's the classic double-edged sword, and it's key to understanding why we are where we are.
And this really lays out the central problem perfectly. On the one hand, its strength was undeniable. For the first time ever, practically every nation on Earth, rich, poor, big, small, was in. That was huge. But here's the weakness, and it's a big one. To get everyone to sign, those national targets had to be voluntary. They're not legally binding. There's no penalty if a country just doesn't meet its goal. And that changes the entire dynamic.
So what you end up with is this constant tug of war. You've got this immense pressure from the public demanding change, crashing right up against the slow, complicated realities of politics and power. I mean, we all saw this play out with activists like Greta Thunberg. She and a whole generation of young people were incredible at just cutting through the noise. They held up the science and pointed out this massive gap between what leaders were promising and what was actually being done. That movement absolutely lit a fire under the issue globally. Because while all that public pressure is building for more faster action, the political winds can shift in a heartbeat. National interests, economic anxieties, they can start pulling the whole effort in the complete opposite direction. And this timeline is the perfect example of that whiplash. In 2015, you've got global unity. Then, just 2 years later, the world's largest economy says, nope, we're out. Then a few years after that, okay, we're back in. This dizzying back and forth really shows you just how fragile a voluntary agreement is when one of the biggest players can just change its mind. And this isn't just about individual leaders or countries. When all the nations gather for these big climate summits like COP29, you see these deep fractures between different groups of nations on full display. Just look at the contrast here. You've got the host nation, Azerbaijan, a major oil and gas producer, defending its right to use fossil fuels. And then in the same conference, you have the small island developing states. We're talking nations that are literally at risk of disappearing under rising seas, walking out in protest. Why? They feel the wealthy nations aren't paying up to help them survive and adapt. It's a total collision of priorities and realities. At the end of the day, all the arguments, all the fights, they really boil down to two massive questions. Who should foot the bill for redesigning our entire global economy? And exactly how fast do we need to do it? And believe me, different countries have wildly different answers. And this isn't some abstract philosophical debate. The moment you try to put a real, ambitious climate plan on the table in any single country, the numbers get absolutely mind-boggling, and the political fight becomes incredibly real. Just take a look at this number, $93 trillion. That was one estimate for what the Green New Deal proposal in the United States could cost. Whether the number is exact or not isn't the point. The point is the monumental scale of the economic shift we are talking about. And as you can imagine, the debate was intense. Supporters saw a historic opportunity to create millions of good-paying green jobs and launch new industries. Critics, on the other hand, warned of crippling national debt and the destruction of jobs in traditional industries like oil, gas, and coal. It was a battle over two very different visions of the economic future. And the result? It was decisive. The U.S. Senate voted 57-0 against even advancing the proposal for debate. It's a stark example of just how politically difficult it is to pass these kinds of huge, expensive climate policies, even in one of the world's richest countries. So, after looking at all this, what's the big picture? What's the final takeaway on the Paris Agreement and this whole global effort? Let's just quickly recap the major hurdles we've seen. You have commitments that are voluntary, so there's no real enforcement. You have political will that can evaporate after a single election. You have the staggering cost of action clashing with a million other economic priorities, and you have these fundamental disagreements between what different nations need and want. But here's what I think is the most important thing to understand. The Paris Agreement isn't a failure. Not at all. It's an absolutely essential first step. It created a framework where nothing existed before. It got everyone to the starting line. But that's all it is, a starting line. It's the foundation, but the house is far from built. So in the end, you can think of it like this. The Paris Agreement gave the world a map. It pointed us all in the same general direction. But as we all know, just having a map doesn't guarantee you'll take the journey. And that leaves us with the big, unanswered question. Is the world actually willing to follow it?